Hello, my name is Colleen Hughes. I am the Executive Director of the Westmoreland Drug and Alcohol Commission.
And I'm Dr. Mark Fuller, the CEO of Value Behavioral Health. In an effort to combat the alarming drug epidemic in Westmoreland County, we have collaborated with Westmoreland County Behavioral Health and Developmental Services and Southwest Behavioral Health Management to develop an educational video series designed to increase awareness and educate community members.
I lost my son Sage to a heroin overdose. Sage was 20 years old.
My son Ryan, who's 25, became addicted to narcotics, opiates at college.
I didn't see my son for a number of years when me and his dad split up. And so he approached me. He came back into my life when he was having problems. Some of my first experiences with him after not seeing him for a long period of time were visiting him in jail.
We didn't know until Sage and two of his good friends got in trouble, and it presented itself. He basically admitted that he was using pills and heroin. He was 17 when we found out.
With raising all of my kids, we talked about drugs and alcohol in high school with teenagers, just because that's what you do. And he was a good student. He was a college athlete. He was a starting goaltender from his freshman college team, and he had everything going for him that I didn't think that we would be that family that would have that problem because we talked about it.
I'm a nurse, and I didn't know what to look for and know what to expect with a son with addiction. First of all, it was probably the least thing from my mind that I would ever suspect with my child. So I didn't know what to look for. Don't ever think this couldn't be me or my child. I think that would probably be one of the worst situations to put yourself in, because denial is a very strong emotion and it can cover up. It makes you want to cover up. Even with the education, like I said, I still couldn't kind of acknowledge that this was really happening, the things that I was seeing.
He just said, "Dad, I'm sorry." And we cried. And you know, I thought, okay, you know, let's get through this and get on the other side. It doesn't work like that. It's a long, hard process that I didn't understand as a parent.
It's a very, very painful process as a parent going through the recovery with your child. When you first find out that your child's addicted, you don't know who to call, where to go, what to do. You feel so helpless. Very, very painful.
The change in him. You know, sleeping later, and you think that's just normal teenage stuff. Anger. Some of the pills would make him very angry. I don't know if it was being on the pills or coming off the pills, but it would make him very angry. And there was times I would look at my son and wonder who this is and why is he going through this. I thought, well, he's just being a teen, you know, the teen years. But he was hiding a secret.
Well, because he lived away from home, there weren't many physical signs in our home, like drug paraphernalia items. So I didn't really see that. It was more in his behavior. He was a very outgoing, loving child, friends with everybody, very outspoken, just a lot of fun. His teachers, coaches, everybody loved him. But then he would become irritable at times that I attributed to just teenage. That's what teenagers do with frustrated parents. And that would be hit or miss. You know, it was never a consistent behavior thing. It would just be random. And then what I also noticed one time, which was the concerning part, was nodding off. We were at a funeral of a family member that passed away, and he kept nodding off next to me in the church pew. And I kept not hitting him, like, were you up late last night? Here I am again attributing this to probably late night studying, or college students probably, obviously probably have parties, and I thought maybe he had a late night. And that was the first sign, with the nodding off. I had no idea what nodding off was. So I attributed it to that. And it wasn't until he came to us that I could look back and know what that was.
Like I mentioned, the lies, the excuses for everything, for not participating in family functions, for not being outright and open. These kind of things make it very difficult to have a genuine relationship or conversation about it. So when I've learned that when they're in the state of addiction, that you can't have a conversation with them. It's almost like talking to the wall, because they're not the person they are. They're the person they are on drugs, and it's very different. And it's a very frightening situation, because you're like, well, where'd my kid go? This is not my child. Their actions, what they say, their reactions, they're very high-strung, don't want to talk about anything for any length of time. They don't sit still. These kind of things are what you see, and it's hard to carry on a conversation because they can't remember for one moment, or they don't choose to from one moment or another to recall what they just told you, and most of it's lies. You come to realize that early on, that they're lying to you.
And you have to learn and get stronger in doing some of these things that you really don't want to do. And one of the things that we had to do was give my son a choice. And we told him after his third inpatient rehab that he had to go back to rehab, or you can't live at home. And he chose to live on the streets. No money, no car, no daily hugs, no nothing. That's what he chose. And after 3 months, and that was a very, very hard decision to do as a parent, but I felt if I didn't do that, he was going to die in my home. So I had to leave it in God's hands and just let him, people say rock bottom, but to everybody that's different. I don't really like that word, but it's really when the addict has had enough with that lifestyle. They seek the high that they can no longer get, and then eventually they will reach a point, hopefully, that they can't live like that anymore. And so he was 3 months on the streets with limited contact, and he came back. We were always there for him, always supporting him with love, and would always be there when he was in recovery. But we told him if he's using drugs, he could not live at our home. And that was the turning point in my son's getting better.
It is a very difficult situation, very difficult. And unless you are dealing with people that have gone through it and educating yourself by reading and anything else, meetings, drug forums, so forth, you're not going to know how to handle it. And it really takes you in, and you are living that addiction life with them, that it kind of takes over your being, and you almost can't function because you're so tied up in it with them. So that's how the meetings have really helped me, hearing other people's stories. But it is very, very difficult. I can remember one of the toughest things I had to do one time. We changed the locks on all of our doors at my home. And then I'm thinking when he comes back, he's going to say, my mother locked me out of her own home. And it makes you feel very uncomfortable, but once you educate yourself, you realize that these are the things you have to do. It's tough love, basically. It's very tough love. But it is the best thing and the right thing to do, and you come to realize that eventually, sometimes on your own after a long time, because these things are hard to do, but you will learn that that is what you need to do.
We don't have to hide in shame. The parents, they don't have to hide in shame. I know when Sage died, at his viewing, we had about 12 parents come through the line telling us that their son or daughter was abusing heroin or pills. I didn't see it in them. And it just, you know, it just made me want to speak up. You know, I hid in shame. I didn't want nobody to know. I wanted my son to move on to the next chapter in life. I wanted him to, his goal was he wanted to go to the Marines. He wanted to fight for his country. And, you know, what I didn't know is he was just fighting to get through where he was at.
Before I was more educated by going to the Nar-Anon, I always had my suspicions, but I would like sort of try to talk myself out of it, that nah, that's just him, or it's just amazing. Even when you do know the information, you still hesitate to believe it, that you don't believe the signs that you're seeing, even though you know you've learned that these are signs of addiction.
You have to get support as a parent. You have to, if you think your child is using, you have to get support. You have to learn all you can about how to deal with a recovering addict, because it's no longer your child that you were raising before he became an addict. So you can't parent the same way. And that's real important, and that's something you have to learn, because you can't argue and fight with an addict and try to reason with them. You blame yourself, you try to reason with them, and it just doesn't work. If they're using drugs, their mind is not clear. So you can't argue with an addict. You just have to hope they go for recovery, and you have to get help yourself. That's very important as a parent, to get help. And that's through a Nar-Anon support group.
And the bottom line is, it comes down to these children have to find themselves, and they're so young. They're not ready yet. You know, they're not ready. I didn't know who I was at 22. I'm still trying to figure it out. And some kids, they're figuring it out at 16, you know, because they're in a situation where life hits them, you know. We have 14-year-old kids sitting in juvie that are full-blown heroin addicts. And they just want to go home and play their Xbox and be normal, but now they got this demon in their head that they're trying to stay away from. You know, Sage used to explain it to me. He said, "Dad, I'm chasing a dragon and I'm running from the sick." You know, and in the beginning I didn't understand that. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I wasn't educated. Something that really upsets me is we send our children away 3-4 hours away and bring our kids back, but we're not educating the parents. It's like, or the family members. We need to educate the family with the individual. I didn't know how to help my son. You know, I know how to help now. Would my son listen? I don't know.
And he has to be in a good place with his recovery for the rest of his life. And that was hard for me to accept, that there wasn't a cure for this. The good news, though, there is hope, that there is recovery. So you can live a normal life. You can recover, but once you use, you're back to square one again. So there is hope, but on the other hand, it's not an easy fix. But I'm very proud of my son, that he's been able to really work the program that he's supposed to work for the last 6 months. But every day as a parent, you worry about relapse, but you learn to also not let that take over your life. You hope that he doesn't, and he makes the right choices, and that you're always there for him. You always love him. You always tell him that. And I do have my son back right now. I mean, he's not living in my home, but he is the child that I had before he used drugs.
But it takes everything away from him. The devil steals their soul. And their shame for things they've done. they feel horrible. They just feel horrible when they finally get recovery. Okay, they're off of the drugs, but then they have so many issues to hurdle and to face. And it seems to me that the rehabs and the recovery community does a pretty good job at encouraging them, along with family and friends, to, you know, believe that they are good people and to pursue where things in life that they began to pursue early on and then got sidetracked by the drug use that they were involved in. So, but it completely steals your child, your loved one, completely in every which way you can imagine. So, but everything is, I think it's surmountable. And that's pretty much what I tell him, truly. And he's coming to learn that. And he's had great support in my family, even though he wasn't part of my family for a long time, because he sees that everybody, and I remind him, I said, Raymond, no one shuns you, nobody wants not to be around you, just everybody welcome arms to come back, and everybody's so happy that you're back, that you are the person they know you to be and want you to do well. And I think that's encouraging for him too.
I know who my son was. My son was a good kid, just like all the other kids, you know, and there's kids that make bad choices, you know, and, you know, probably one of the greatest things that happened to me was I was in juvie one night, and these two kids from Allegheny County found out who I was, and they were up at the big jail with Sage's dealer, and they didn't like me because they only heard his side. And you know, I told my story about Sage, and they got up and walked out, and they said some pretty nasty things, and they got up and walked out. 2 weeks later, one of those young men came back in and came up to me, and he cried, and he held me and said, I'm sorry, I want to help. And he goes, how can I join Sage's Army? And I said, you know, wherever you go, whenever you get out. I said, wherever you go, we'll stay in contact. Whenever you get out, you know, we'll get you going. He goes, how can I get a shirt? And I told him, I said, well, I spoke earlier today, and I have the very first Sage's Army shirt in my truck. I said, if you honor it, I'll get it for you. I'll go out and get it if they let me. And I gave it to him. And, you know, I'm hoping that I get to see him again. That's what we do with Sage's Army. We try to get out into the community and educate parents. You don't have to hide. You know, there's no shame in this game. We don't have to hide in stigma and shame.
As a parent of a recovering addict, you feel like you're all alone, and there is help out there, and it's called Nar-Anon, which is a family support group, and that actually saved my husband and myself from losing our minds, because there were other family members going through what we were going through, and they understood, and they teach you how to live your life with a recovering addict, whether it's a spouse or your child, and you have to learn and get strong, get stronger in doing some of these things that you really don't want to do.
The communicating with other people that are in the same situation, first of all, allows you to let down your guard somewhat, because it is a anonymous kind of program, and what happens at the meetings is supposed to stay there. You can talk about situations, but not names and faces. So it does allow you to let your guard down and hear directly from other people that are in the same kind of situations, and you realize you're not alone in this whole situation. You learn that there are people out there that are more than willing to help. It seems like it's a community of people that will and want to help anybody that they can that gets into the situation with having addiction in their family.